Minnesota Vikings fall 7-14 at home against the Cleveland Browns. Another nail biter, close matchup, losing by just a touchdown, falling to 1-3 on the season and third in the division. Minnesota Vikings are the best 1-3 team in the NFL. And is it time to panic? Is this when the Vikings should be looking to next year's draft? Is this when the Vikings season is over? This is what we'll be discussing about in this episode, as well as recapping this matchup. So everything that I said was going to happen in this matchup happened. Minnesota Vikings offense was tested all game. Minnesota Vikings were not able to stop the run, and the Minnesota Vikings run game did not look that great. Minnesota Vikings offense in the first drive looked excellent, completing a 12-yard touchdown pass to Justin Jefferson, finding him in the end zone with the leading score starting 7-0. Minnesota Vikings were shut out the rest of the game. Why were they shut out the rest of the game? Because this Vikings offensive line was not able to protect for Kirk Cousins for more than 3 seconds the entire game. On top of that, Minnesota Vikings were not able to establish the run early in the game. So really what was happening here was the Vikings offense had no chance of succeeding here. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings, we have to look at a couple key factors here. Number one, Dalvin Cook was not healthy the entire game. Going into this first drive of the game, Minnesota Vikings had to rush Dalvin Cook back up in this matchup because this is a matchup the Vikings could have won and should have won with a fully healthy Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook was coming in off of an injury after missing the matchup against the Seattle Seahawks, was coming back and was not fully healthy to play. And you saw it in this matchup. He also was banged up and went down, and Alexander Madison ended up getting more carries than Dalvin Cook did. Dalvin Cook had a total of 9 carries for 34 yards, averaging to 3.8 yards per carry. Just imagine if we had a fully healthy Dalvin Cook. Now, the Browns are one of the best run-stopping defenses in the NFL, so I wouldn't expect Dalvin Cook to have a career game. However, Dalvin Cook would be able to get us that extra touchdown that would bring the Vikings into the overtime against the Cleveland Browns. Alexander Madison, though, after having such a great day against the Seattle Seahawks, had 10 carries for 20 yards. That averages to 2 yards per carry. So the Vikings were not able to establish the run in the game as they had a total of 65 rushing yards in this matchup. Vikings were not able to establish the run. So what did they do? They put the ball in Kirk Cousins' hands. Now, when you put the ball in Kirk Cousins' hands, it starts with one thing, the offensive line. Kirk Cousins is the best quarterback under center, the best quarterback in the pocket when he has a clean pocket, when the offensive line is able to buy him time. Going into this matchup, the Minnesota Vikings offensive line was ranked 10th in the NFL. And I said, we are not the best 10th. We are not the 10th best offensive line in the NFL. The reason why we aren't the 10th best offensive line in the NFL is because we have Rashad Hill starting at left tackle. Now, I'm a big Rashad Hill guy. I think he's a great tackle, a great backup tackle. Minnesota Vikings right now, Christian Darrisaw is coming off of a groin injury after missing all of training camp, all of team OTAs, and all of the preseason, and then the first 3 regular season games with the Minnesota Vikings. Christian Darrisaw came back, made his NFL debut by playing 1 snap. That wasn't an offensive snap. That was 1 snap on special teams. Minnesota Vikings had Rashad Hill play all 100% of offensive snaps, giving up 7 pressures to Kirk Cousins and a sack. Christian Darrisaw, our first-round draft pick out of Virginia Tech, 23rd, I think it was, draft pick out of Virginia Tech, has to be starting at left tackle by the end of this season. Hopefully, after bye week 7. Minnesota Vikings, the next 2 matchups, play Lions and play the Panthers. We have to see Darrisaw get somewhere around half of these snaps. It just has to happen at this point because he is the future at left tackle. That's why you drafted him in the first round, and that's why you need him, because right now Rashad Hill is not looking like a starting left tackle, and we didn't expect that out of him in the first place. Now, yes, we have to cut him some slack. He was going against Myles Garrett, the best defensive end, the best pass rushing defensive end in the NFL. So you have to cut him some slack there. However, with that being said, Christian Darrisaw would not have given up 7 pressures and a sack. Christian Darrisaw in his 2020 season with Virginia Tech, by the way, Virginia Tech is in the ACC, so he had some tough matchups. Again, it's college though, but as a whole, in Christian Darrisaw's 2020 season with Virginia Tech, gave up 6 pressures and 0 sacks. Compared to Rashad Hill in one day, gave up 7 pressures and a sack. Christian Darrisaw has to be the starting left tackle for the Minnesota Vikings by the end of this season. I wouldn't expect him to start against the Detroit Lions. I'd expect Rashad Hill to start and play the entire first half. However, you have to rotate Christian Darrisaw into that role because he is the future for this team. In the Browns game, it showed Minnesota Vikings had to have invested more into this offensive line in the offseason. You know how great of a quarterback Kirk Cousins can be, but it starts with the offensive line. If the Minnesota Vikings, instead of investing all this money into defense, got Joe Thuney and Trent Williams on the left side of the offensive line, Vikings would have won yesterday. And there's no question about that. When you take a look at the Vikings defensive side of the ball, Vikings defense is given a lot of credit right now because the Browns only did have 14 points in this matchup. However, with that being said, Vikings allowed far too many yards on the ground. And the only reason why the Browns only had 14 points in this matchup was because Baker looked awful. Kirk Cousins played better than Baker yesterday, and Kirk Cousins was pressured on every snap. Baker just looked awful. Browns should have doubled their points and actually had 28 if Baker could hit Odell for that open walk-off touchdown, as well as seeing his open man, Kareem Hunt, who was wide open in the end zone. But as a whole, this Vikings defense did not look good. They allowed blown coverage on Rashad Higgins twice. And then that was mainly Bashaud Breeland's fault. And then Breeland was actually bent or sidelined in this matchup with an illness. Now, going into this game, we knew Breeland had an illness, but he played the first series for the Minnesota Vikings defense and then was benched with an illness. I don't think that's really why he was benched. I think the one who's sick is Mike Zimmer. I think Mike Zimmer is sick of seeing Bashaud Breeland on the field, as he should be, because Bashaud Breeland has been the worst corner in football so far and started this matchup once more. And then bringing Cameron Dantzler out there was a sigh of relief as Dantzler looked so much better than Breeland. Now, Dantzler might be immature. He might be a young guy. He might be undersized. But what he is, most certainly, is better than Bashaud Breeland. And this is why Dantzler needs to start the next matchup for the Minnesota Vikings, going up against Quintez Cephas in week 5, and should play a lot better than Bashaud Breeland has been so far this season. I'm excited for Cameron Dantzler. I'm not the biggest Dantzler fan, and I'll say that again. I don't think he should be a starting corner in the NFL, but what he should be is starting over Bashaud Breeland so far this season from what we've seen, how bad Breeland has been, the 103rd ranked corner by PFF out of 103 corners ranked. Minnesota Vikings, Bashaud Breeland has to be benched and starting Cameron Dantzler over him. On top of that, the worst play the Minnesota Vikings had was a 3rd and 20 run for Kareem Hunt allowed to a first down. Vikings are awful tacklers. And it really starts with this Vikings linebackers, because our Vikings defensive line is great. And I'll say that again. They might have not had a great performance against the Browns offensive line, but this Vikings defensive line as a whole is good. It's solid. And the Vikings, when you invest this much into the defensive line, it should be good. Our front four, Michael Pierce, one of the best run stoppers in the NFL. Dalvin Tomlinson, now he's a little bit iffy, but he is playing very well. He did get a sack yesterday as well. Everson Griffin looks really good at defensive end and should start over DJ Wanham at defensive end in this next matchup and should play at the 3 tech on 3rd down as well. Obviously, not much to say about Danielle Hunter other than the fact that he's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. So that's our front four right there. And then our supporting cast, we have Sheldon Richardson, Stephen Weatherly. Armon Watts looks great. James Lynch was injured, but we have a solid defensive line. Our linebackers, though, look awful outside of Eric Kendricks. Okay, Eric Kendricks is the best. But we're looking at the outside linebackers here as we need Anthony Barr to be back now. We need him to be healthy. Anthony Barr has missed a total of it was 14 games last year and 4 games so far this season. 18 straight games with the Minnesota Vikings Anthony Barr has missed. And we've started Nick Vigil at linebacker, who looked so good so far this season, but had a terrible game against the Cleveland Browns. And then we also have Blake Lynch, 2020 UDFA, starting at linebacker. Looked solid. However, he is a UDFA. Imagine if we have Barr out there. We would be able to get to the pass rusher with blitzing. Nice. We would also be able to stop the run on the right side of the line if we had Anthony Barr out there. If he's looking like he used to look in 2016, 2017. If we have that Anthony Barr on the field. We need him to be back healthy ASAP. especially after this bye week where we have a tough schedule after the bye week 7. Minnesota Vikings need Anthony Barr back for the second half of the season, starting at strong side linebacker, and that is the biggest hole on this Vikings defense right now. Nick Vigil was invisible. That guy played 100% of the snaps at strong side linebacker for the Minnesota Vikings and got one solo tackle with the defense. I mean, he was not able to get to the running back at all. They allowed far too many big runs. And then you look at Blake Lynch. Blake Lynch did okay, but he's a 2020 UDFA. The Vikings right now have to rush Anthony Barr back because these outside linebackers are god-awful. I mean, Nick Vigil did good so far this season. In this matchup, did not do great, but we need Anthony Barr to come back at strong side linebacker and have 3 linebackers able to stop the run, because so far this season, Vikings have been one of the worst teams against the run. In the offseason, invested so much into the defense, and I said Vikings were going to be one of the best teams against the run. I don't understand how they aren't. With Michael Pierce, Dalvin Tomlinson, Eric Kendricks, Danielle Hunter, Everson Griffin, I just can't wrap my head around the fact that the Vikings are terrible against the run when you have all of these excellent run stoppers on your team. So to answer the question, is it time to panic? I see on Reddit, I see on Twitter, a lot of Vikings fans are completely panicking. They're saying, now we have to tank and go for Spencer Rattler. They're saying now we just are looking to the draft. Is it time to panic? It depends on what you're going for here. Are your Super Bowl chances with the Vikings ruined? Yes, they are. There's no way the Vikings are going to be able to go in the playoffs against some of these teams, specifically the Rams and a lot of these teams, on away games and make a Super Bowl. Are the Vikings' playoff chances ruined? Absolutely not. I mean, there's 7 teams that are going to be making the playoffs this season. Vikings' next 2 matchups, they have the Lions at home and they play the Panthers. And then after that, they have a bye week. Vikings should be going into their bye week 3-3. Vikings are the best 1-3 team in football. And our division does not look all that tough either. Packers are looking good. Outside of that, Vikings can go 2-0 against the Bears. Vikings will go 2-0 against the Lions. Vikings, even splitting with the Packers, would be a win. Vikings should finish second in the division and should make the playoffs as a wild card. Thing is, I have no faith in this Vikings team going on the road and making a Super Bowl run, but we'll wait and see how the Vikings look after the bye week in the second half of the season. By Halloween, the Vikings will play on Halloween. By then, we will really see what this Vikings team is made of. Hopefully, Anthony Barr can be back. Hopefully, Christian Darrisaw will be starting over Rashad Hill by then. Hopefully, Cameron Dantzler will be starting over Bashaud Breeland. And that's really where it starts. Those are our 3 weakest links on this Vikings team so far this season has been Rashad Hill, that linebacker position, and then cornerback, Bashaud Breeland. If they fix those 3 spots, second half of the season, Vikings can make a playoff run. So really, it depends on what your expectations are. I'm still very hopeful that the Vikings will make the playoffs. I'm 1% sure they'll make a Super Bowl. In fact, I'm less than 1% sure they'll make a Super Bowl at this point, because the Vikings will be going in the playoffs as a wildcard team and likely not be competing for a Super Bowl. But they should be. We have far too much talent to be 1-3 so far this season. Vikings are 2 plays away from being 3-1. Vikings should be a lot better than they are so far this season, and we have too much talent to not make a playoff run. We have too much talent on this Vikings offense and defense to be this bad in the season. So now, starting the season 1-3, not where we want to be in the season so far. However, our next couple matchups should be relaxing, and Vikings should be 3-3 going into their bye week. And this is what we're going to be expecting from the Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins, Mike Zimmer, and this offense, and surprisingly, this defense going up against next week against the Detroit Lions, which we will be previewing this matchup on this Thursday on this podcast. I hope you all do enjoy.